All right, so check it out, EOS R5 Mark II. I've been an R5 user since day one, and I'm super excited to get the R5 Mark II in my hands. Don't worry, camera wasn't in the box. Already unboxed it. Check it out. This is the R5 Mark II with the 28-70 f2, and can't wait to start shooting with it. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about one thing here. I am going to be doing a series of review videos on this channel of the R5 Mark II. This is just an initial impressions video, but I want to get your input. Let me know what you want me to test on this camera. What do you want to see? These are some ideas I've written down for videos that are going to pop up on the channel soon. How to get the best dynamic range out of your R5 Mark II. And there's some interesting new features in the menu, which I'm excited to test out too. You can actually I'll talk about that in the next section here. Menu setup for photo and video. I'm gonna go through a whole breakdown of the best settings for photo, best settings for video. R5 versus R5 Mark II. I think that's gonna be a big video because a lot of people have the R5 and they're wondering, should I even buy an R5 Mark II? Is this camera even worth the upgrade? We have a battery and overheat test. So I want to test out the R5 Mark II, see how long the battery lasts. When does it overheat? What settings does it overheat with? Can you use a dummy battery with the R5 Mark II? That's important to me. Setup for shooting with vintage lenses. So for those of you who like shooting with vintage stuff, that's not going to be a super popular video, but for me personally, I love vintage lenses. So I'm going to make a video talking about that. And I also want to test EF lenses on the R5 Mark II. Has Canon dumbed down the autofocus? Can we still use EF lenses with the Mark II? Is it still good? Is the face tracking and autofocus and all that stuff good? So that's something I have planned, and I have a photo shoot with a beautiful model set up for this Saturday. I'm going to be using this setup right here, and I'll be doing behind the scenes videos, and we'll be talking about the photos, and I'll be talking about my experience with this camera as a photography camera. So that's all coming up. So with that being said, let's jump into this video, and we'll start with a quick unboxing, take a look at what you get in the box, and then we're gonna run through the menu settings, and I'll talk about new features, new options, what options are new, what's missing, what Canon could have done better, and all that stuff. So let's jump into a very quick unboxing. All right, this is gonna be fun. I'm excited about this camera. We got some paperwork, we got a strap, we got, this is probably the charger, new battery, and I like all these, being friendly to the environment. These are all biodegradable materials. This whole box can biodegrade, so kudos to Canon on that. That's pretty awesome. All right, so you actually come with a USB-C to USB-C cable, and this is a little piece that allows you, I believe it is, we'll have to test it out, but I think this is a way to lock in your HDMI cable to the camera so it doesn't slip out, which is awesome. And that is it. Now for the star of the show. All right. Looks pretty nice, right? That's sweet. All right, so let's take a trip around the outside, around the outside, around the outside. And this body is a little bit bigger than the original R5. It's just a little thicker, but it isn't really noticeable. There is one thing that is noticeable though, is the ergonomics. Here they cut into the handle or the grip just a little bit, and it's good, but it's not as good as the EOS R. The EOS R is still the most comfortable camera grip out of any Canon camera. Oh, I love holding the EOS R. It just feels good in the hands. This corner is notched in just enough that it just sits in your palm and you can hold it, and it's comfortable and it feels great. This R5 Mark II has a little bit of a notch, more than the R5 original, but it still doesn't feel as nice as the original R. The original R, like I said, has the best grip out of any Canon camera. In terms of the outside, we have a photo video switch on the left side. And I did have somebody ask me a question. One of the subscribers asked, can you still set the MFN button to switch between photo and video mode? And you would assume you could. So I tested it in the camera, I tested it in the custom button menu, and the option isn't there. So I don't understand why Canon got rid of that. That was a great hack with the EOS R5. You could hit the MFN button to switch between photo and video mode, and it just, you know what? I would have, a dedicated photo video switch is great, thankful for that. But when you're shooting photo and you just want to quickly switch to video, you can just hit the MFN button and you're in video mode. So I don't know why Canon got rid of that feature in the menu options. Hopefully they put it back in firmware, because that was a very handy feature. Another thing on the outside is the on-off switch is now right here, and it is perfect. Canon, don't ever change this. This is where it should be. This is awesome. The only place that would be better is right by the shutter release button, so you can put more buttons here. But in any case, this is great. I was really happy with the R7 because the R7 has the on-off switch here by your thumb. But the problem is like when you hit it with your thumb to go to on-off or video photo mode, you lose a little bit of your, I guess, a stable grip on the camera. So there is like, at that point when your thumb's not on there, you can lose the camera and drop it. But with the I guess the Mark II, I'm gonna call this the Mark II, the R5, which I'm filming with right now, is just gonna be the R5. That was the R7. But yeah, with this, you don't like, you don't sacrifice your grip on the camera when you change modes, which is absolutely awesome. So kudos to Canon on that. That is great. There's a little like hat on the hot shoe, which is a bit of a pain in the butt to take off and on. There we go, got it off. And the weird thing is that the design language on this little hat piece doesn't match the design language on the rest of the camera. And like the Canon logo here is forward, but if here it's upside down, there's no continuity. And from a design perspective, I don't even know what Canon was thinking, but I know they've had issues with the hot shoes breaking and stuff like that. I've never had any issues with any of my Canon hot shoes, but I know that is kind of one of the sore spots people complain about. So yeah, there we go. We have a cover for that now. Now, one thing to note here is that the R5 Mark II joystick is beefier. It feels more dense. It feels more, what's the word, robust than the R5 joystick, and people have had problems with the R5 joystick snapping off. So I guess Canon must have redesigned it, and it just feels a lot more stable. It feels a lot firmer, so that's a good thing. Hopefully the joysticks on the Mark II don't snap off. So everything else on the outside is about the same. We still have these metal strap connectors, which is great. No, it doesn't jingle except for I guess the IBIS. It doesn't really jiggle that much, so I guess the magnets must lock down when the camera's off. All right, so one of the places where this camera has changed is the menu. It's not so different that you can't figure it out, but it has been tweaked and adjusted a little bit, and there are some interesting new features and new options. So let's talk about that, because I think the biggest change with this camera is right there. All right, so there's something interesting here with this camera. It actually remembers things that you double tap to track. So here we have, let's see if we can show here. See, the thing is, like, my screen goes blank when I'm recording it. So I have to like unplug this and plug it back in. Okay, so here's a picture. There's a model here, her face is visible, and then here I am with, this is the old like 5D Mark III or something, and I'm shooting a reflection in the mirror. So I'm gonna have to unplug this, double tap the screen on the camera that I'm shooting with, and then plug it back in. So hopefully it doesn't stop recording when I do that. It does. All right, so here we go. I double tap the screen where I am, so I'm focusing on myself holding the camera, and if I go over here to the model, it doesn't track her eyes, but if I come back here, it remembers. If I go up here and come back, it remembers. Like, how crazy is that, right? Let's go somewhere else. Oh, now it's tracking the model. Now it remembers what I double tap to track. Like, is that nuts or what? Like, I wasn't expecting this. This is something totally crazy. So here we have, let's focus on something completely, it won't even focus on anything else. And then I come back here. Oh, did it finally lose me? Oh, it finally lost it. Okay, but that's pretty cool that it kind of remembered what I double tapped to track, and it kept locking onto that. And another feature here that's pretty cool is the set button actually goes from regular tracking to eye tracking, but I don't have it set to, oh, I just hit the set button and it jumped back to me. What? Ha! Okay, so here's single point focus. Let's focus on this Optimus Prime here. We come back here, we'll focus here, and we'll hit the set button. No. Now I've given it some, okay, so what if I take this, click on myself, and then hit the set button? Ah, no, now it's like tracking the model's face. Okay, now it required me. Okay, so obviously I have to play around with this and figure out how to use it, and it's tough because I can't actually touch the back of my screen because I'm recording the screen so it's black. But let's try this again. So hit the set button. Now we're just at single point autofocus. Come back here. Let's move this to the other side of the screen. So we're on her, and we'll hit the set button again. Oh, so I guess it's wherever the you have your focus point, and you hit the set button, it'll track if you're using if you're not using the touch screen. But with the touch screen, you saw how it like tracked my face even if when I moved the camera around. So that is a really cool feature, and I guess that's the new AI tracking chip. Whatever you tap to track, it remembers. So that's pretty cool. And right now I don't have it set to tracking people. So let's pop into the menu and let's go to the autofocus section. Subject to detect none. Let's go to people. And here's the other thing I noticed. So you can set your autofocus here to single point, and we can focus wherever we want, right? But if you hit the set button again, it'll automatically go to tracking eyes. And then I can hit the set button and get rid of the tracking eyes, and I can track on like other parts of the image. And then I hit the set button again. Oh, now it's tracking my camera bag. Click on, okay, so if I take the focus point, double tap the joystick to center it, I click here, hit center or set, and it'll track that. That's so cool. So there's a whole new way of using the autofocus with this camera that I have to learn, which is nuts. Oh, we lost it. Yeah. Oh, there it goes. It's back to the eye. Anyway, so there's also the eye tracking autofocus, which I'm not going to touch on in this video, but I will mention that with the new eyepiece here, you'll have like, let's say you have 2 people in the shot, so that's 4 eyes, and the camera will register all 4 eyes, and whichever one you're looking at will be the one it tracks. So that's pretty cool, right? So yeah, that's interesting new autofocus settings that we really couldn't do with the R5. So now let's move on to the next thing. What do we got? All right, so another really interesting thing here is with dynamic range, and I'm gonna make a video talking about this. I'm gonna test it a little more, but before, you couldn't turn on auto lighting optimizer and highlight tone priority at the same time. So I have highlight tone priority set to D+, and auto lighting not disabled in manual or B modes, really. Okay, so let's change modes. Let's go FV mode. Okay, menu. Auto lighting optimizer. So there we go. We can turn on auto lighting optimizer and highlight tone priority at the same time, which gives us some pretty good dynamic range. Now, I know before in the R5, auto lighting optimizer only affected JPEGs, not RAWs, while highlight tone priority affects RAWs and JPEGs. So I'm going to test this out and make a video about this, talking about how to get the best dynamic range for photography out of your R5 Mark II. So stick around, but that's a really cool thing that we can actually use both settings at the same time. All right, and another setting that the Mark II has that the R5 didn't have is pre-shooting both in photo and video. So if you turn those settings on, the camera will actually start recording video when you halfway depress the button, and it'll start shooting photos when you halfway depress the button. How many shots I'm gonna put down below, I think it's 10 shots or so. I don't remember exactly how many, but it'll shoot photos or videos before you actually start shooting photos and videos. So for those of you who shoot birds or fast action sports or something like that, that's a super handy feature. And this camera seems to be really geared towards people who want to shoot speed. Like if you shoot action sports or birds, wildlife, that kind of thing, and you need a fast camera, that's what the R5 Mark II really seems like it's geared for. I personally won't ever use it. I shoot portraits and things like that, so I don't need high-speed burst or pre-shooting, but it's a cool feature for those of you who do need it. A cool feature that came over from the R5 into the Mark II is save and load cam settings. So you can actually take your settings from your camera, save them onto a card, and name them. So you can have settings for weddings, settings for outdoor shoots, settings for slow motion video or whatnot, and you can save them all to a card, and then you can pop them back onto your camera and reload them onto your camera. Or if you have a second Mark II or a second shooter who's using a Mark II, or you need to rent a Mark II, you can take your settings and load them up onto another camera. So you can, in essence, have multiple cameras that are exactly the same. So you don't have to memorize or change anything. You just load up the card and boom, the other camera is set up just like your original camera. All right, so let's switch gears and talk about video menu settings. We now have C-Log 2 on this camera. Before you only had C-Log 1 and 3, and 2 is the C-Log with the most dynamic range. So for those of us who shoot in high contrast situations, C-Log 2 is definitely going to be a huge plus. That 30-minute record limit is also gone. And another really cool thing is, pay attention right here, I hit record, there's a tally light. It actually turns red, so stop, start. So there we go, we're recording, and on the back of the screen too, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little red outline around the screen. Now, I'm glad Canon put the little red outline around the LCD screen to let us know we're recording, but that outline should be a lot thicker. Like it should be at least triple that thickness because, I mean, at a distance, can you tell there's a red outline around that screen? No. And if you're on, set doing a production and the camera's over there and you glance over, you might not see that there's a red outline. So it would be nice if this outline was just a little bit bigger. If you could do that in firmware, that would be awesome. So one of the big issues with the R5, I don't want to say it's an issue. One of the quirks was that when you're recording video with the R5, you had a really beefy codec, and if your computer wasn't top of the line, you would have a hard time trying to edit those files, right? So now with the R5 Mark II, you have a lot more recording options. In fact, you can go in and select, let's see, what is it? You have 10-bit 422, 10-bit 420, 8-bit 420. So you can select your bit rate, which is awesome. So if you're working with an older computer or a laptop or something less powerful or more powerful, you can kind of adjust which bit rate you use, and you don't have to deal with your scrub window chonking along because the bit rate or the file size out of your R5 was too big. An interesting feature with the Mark II is that you can shoot video and take photos at the same time. Now, this isn't a feature I'm interested in or would ever use, but if you're a photojournalist, for example, and you're shooting a photo or video of something, you can take photos too. Now, there's a caveat: the video has to be 1080p and the photos are JPEG. But you can switch your photo settings to single shot or burst mode, so you can take a burst of photos while you're making a video. And I suppose if you're taking a video of something like once in a lifetime kind of event or interview or something's going on, you can just take some photos too. And I mean, you could always take your video and put it into Premiere Pro or whatever video editor and just screenshot frames and set those up as photos and send them. But if you're out in the field working and your client or whatever, the desk wants video and photo, it's a cool feature for photojournalists. So that's kind of awesome. Okay, and for videographers as well, there's zebras here, which is great. And there's also false color, which is also good if you're into shooting with false color. And I believe I saw waveforms in here too. You can see waveforms. I don't know where it is in the menu. I saw it and I remember seeing it, but I can't seem to find it anymore. But there are waveforms. I'll put the menu area and tab down below when I do find it so that you guys can find it too. And also a big thing for those of you who shoot video is finally we have full-size HDMI, which is great. And you're gonna have to buy some new cables. That's if you're upgrading from the R5 to the R5 Mark II, your old cable connectors won't work. You're gonna have to buy full HDMI to HDMI. And I would recommend, if you're doing that, make sure you buy an HDMI cable that's capable of transferring 8K. All right, so now let's just talk about photo quality. I'm gonna slideshow some shots here that I took by the lake the other day. And I did some pixel peeping and I was looking at the photos and I was hoping to see something different. But really, I mean, even with the stacked backside illuminated sensor here, you're not really getting anything better in terms of resolution. So in terms of the R5 Mark II and the original R5, photo quality is the same. So if you're thinking of upgrading the camera and spending extra money on the Mark II, I mean, you're not gonna see any difference in terms of deliverables to your client. It's still the same 45 megapixel sensor, even though it has faster readout speeds. So yeah, there we go. All right, so when it comes to video, not much difference between the R5 and the R5 Mark II. You still get the same kinds of video, the same quality. I think, to my eye anyway, I don't see much of a difference. And in terms of deliverables that you send to clients after processing and exporting out of your video editing program, I don't think there's gonna be much of a difference between both cameras. The autofocus might be better on the Mark II, and you might get a little more dynamic range out of C-Log 2 if you're shooting in really tricky lighting situations. So that's the only benefit I can think of in the Mark II, but I'm gonna have to test out the cameras and put them against each other to find out exactly what the differences are, if there are any at all to be noted. Now, before I close out this video, there is one thing on the R5 Mark II that really kind of blew me away, and I wasn't expecting this. Most of the updates on this camera are just incremental updates over the EOS R5. But there's one thing on the Mark II that just kind of like, it grabs me. And after I get used to this feature, I don't know if I'll be able to go back to shooting with the R5 anymore. And that's the EVF. I'm not talking about the eye-controlled autofocus or anything like that. I'm just talking about the magnification and the size of the screen. When you look through this camera, you're in your photo. It is a big, massive view of your scene. And like right off the bat, first impressions are like, wow, you know, because that's one of the things I've been really wanting from Canon is the magnification, and the EVF just seems so small. Even on the old 5D series cameras, it just wasn't big enough. And when you look through like a Hasselblad viewfinder, you're in your photo. You can see everything. You can see all the details in the model's face and all that kind of stuff. And that's important, especially if you're shooting portraits, because expressions, emotions, just the slight move of the eyebrow or the lip make a difference. And when I look through the EVF here, I was kind of blown away, and that is awesome. So like I said, this Saturday I have a photo shoot booked. I got a model, we're gonna go do some photos. And after that photo shoot, I'm gonna talk about my experience with this camera as a photography camera and my experience with the EVF. Is it really gonna make a difference once I start shooting? Will I even notice that it's a bigger screen or a more magnified screen? So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to using. But yeah, so those are my initial impressions of the R5 Mark II. And if you want to see more, definitely subscribe to the channel, because a bunch of the next videos are all going to be about this camera, and I look forward to getting to know it and sharing it with you guys. And of course, if you have any questions about this camera, anything you want me to test, leave your comments down below, because I know there's a lot of things that people want me to test with this. I've already gotten a few messages from people, so leave your comments down in the description or down in the comment section. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video where we talk about this camera a little bit more. All right, peace out. See you in the next one.